Hello again. I'm Ken George, and today I want to talk a little bit about the size of government. I put together a small montage of the president's denials, misleadings, and outright lies, not to denigrate Mr. Obama, but to illustrate a broader point. During my lifetime, the office of the President of the United States has gotten bigger and bigger. Congress has relinquished much of its authority to the President. He's responsible for a lot of things. I began to think about how overwhelming it must be to be president. I put it in the context of running my own business. I've been the owner of a small business for over 25 years. If you've never owned a business, it may be hard to grasp just how difficult it can be. As the owner, you're not only responsible for the daily operations, but you must also ensure that the business runs profitably. That is to say that unless the business takes in at least as much revenue as it spends, it will just fail. A business, like the government, can borrow money if it spends more than it takes in. But eventually, if you can't pay back those loans with incoming revenue, as well as all the daily expenses, you will not be able to continue to borrow, and that's when the business fails. Now, the federal government, unlike states and cities, has the ability to print more cash. But even this tool has its limitations. As more currency is printed, the value of the currency goes down, causing the daily expenses to take more revenue to sustain. But let's not dwell on currency printing. Suffice it to say that printing cash will cause inflation, and that will cripple the entire economy. I want to talk about running a business. Again, my premise is how difficult running a business can be. I was in charge of 35 people and a $3 million budget. Just imagine. The federal government is 1,000,000 times bigger. Hell, running 35 people is next to impossible. How in the world can one person run 4 million people and a $3 trillion budget? To be effective, a boss must have information, all sorts of information. You have to know what the codes are to build, modify, expand, or repair your space. You have to know what's going on in the city or area you service. You must know about your employees, their problems, their needs, and their abilities. You need to know about revenue and expenses, of course. You need to notice what your customers are saying about your business. You also need to be up on current events as they may affect your business. This is just a few things a boss needs to be up on to be effective. This information comes from many sources: your people, your customers, your friends, the news, or any of a variety of publications. But the more you know about each of these things, the more effectively you can make decisions. I'm just a simple man, so maybe that's why it was so hard to be the boss. I had 35 employees and did just over $3 million in sales a year. Small potatoes compared to the American government. The presidency has become too much for one man to handle. It's become that way because of many factors, but our expectations for a leader, a problem solver, is one. The lack of a Congress to do its job is another. But the real reason, in my opinion, is the willingness of any president to want and take more control. Because of that desire for control, the federal government has been expanding for generations. The more it expands, the higher our expectations become for government to solve our problems. But bigger isn't better. We still only have one president. He now has the responsibility to manage the military in an ever more complex world. This alone is a humongous job. But he also has to manage our economy, our education, our energy, our farms, our highways, our employment, our retirement, our taxes, our businesses, our land, and now even our health care. Each of these vast areas of our life in America would overwhelm any CEO. But to try to manage all of them at one time, I contend is impossible for one person. Even though the president has millions of people helping him, The information being gathered on a daily basis simply cannot be consolidated and put into a concise enough format that he can use it to make all the decisions that need to be made. So what happens? You get hundreds, if not thousands of people we don't know, and they don't know us, making decisions that affect our daily lives in a very random way. Friends, if you don't have a say in how your life unfolds, then that's not freedom. We have skirted this issue for too long. Our lives, whether rich or poor, need to be controlled by us, not by invisible bureaucrats. This montage illustrates how our president has become ineffective in his role. He denies, he lies, and he admits a lack of knowledge. In his defense, he is expected by us to run 50 major corporations all at the same time. No matter how much help you have, this is just impossible. I wish I had an answer as to how you change it. I suspect it isn't changeable and will only get worse. It will take the right man and the right set of circumstances to change. It will also require a Congress that is willing to make the changes that limit the scope of the federal government. As hard as I try, I just don't see a way to get there. So when you look at this montage of clips, look at it in this context. The reason for Obama's perceived failure in so many areas isn't because he's evil. It's because the government is just too big. Thanks for listening.
It was something we found out about along.
But keep in mind, this is an ad that I didn't approve, I did not produce, and as far as I can tell, has barely run. Think of ran.
By the time I took office, we had a one-year deficit of over $1 trillion and projected deficits of $8 trillion over the next decade. Most of this was the result of not paying for two major tax cuts skewed to the wealthy and a worthy but expensive prescription drug program that wasn't paid for. I always find it interesting that the same people who participated in these decisions are the ones who now charge our administration with fiscal irresponsibility. And the truth is, if I had taken office in ordinary times, I would have liked nothing more than to start bringing down the deficits that they created. But we took office amid a crisis, and the effects of the recession put a $3 trillion hole in our budget before I even walked through the door. And let's be clear, none of this is necessary. It's happening because a choice that Republicans in Congress have made. They've allowed these cuts to happen because they refuse to budge on closing a single wasteful loophole to help reduce the deficit.
I heard on the news about this story that
The decision made by career officials at ICE without any input from the White House as a result of fiscal uncertainty over the continuing resolution as well as possible sequestration. He found out about the news reports yesterday.
At what point did you inform the White House, or do you have any knowledge when the White House was informed by DOJ that they were investigating the press?
My guess would be that the White House found out about this by reading the newspapers.
Learned about it from the same news reports that I think most people learned about this. I think it was on Friday. Solyndra, this is a loan guarantee program that predates me, that historically has had support from Democrats and Republicans.
In every country, there are those who find different religious beliefs threatening. In every culture, those who love freedom for themselves must ask themselves how much they're willing to tolerate freedom for others. And that is what we saw play out in the last 2 weeks, as a crude and disgusting video sparked outrage throughout the Muslim world. Now, I have made it clear that the United States government had nothing to do with this video, and I believe its message must be rejected by all who respect our common humanity. It is an insult not only to Muslims, but to America as well. For as the city outside these walls makes clear, we are a country that has welcomed people of every race and every faith.